Huge thank you to CIBC for making We Get It possible. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Karine. I'm the program director with Young Adult Cancer Canada, and welcome to a new episode of We Get It. I haven't recorded an episode in a little while because we had a few lined up to present you, but I am super happy for the episode I'm doing today. I'm with Jay, and we're going to have an awesome conversation. Today, it is a beautiful, gorgeous, sunny summer day in Newfoundland. So sometimes in June, it's rain, drizzle, and fog season, Jay, in Newfoundland, usually in June. It is not the case right now. It's amazing. I'm wearing my hair up. They're dark hair. I am proudly wearing my Born to Run t-shirt. Big Bruce Springsteen lover. So tramps like us, baby, we were born to run. Is on my t-shirt, and I'm in my kitchen, actually, well, dining room today, because the light is awesome here, and I like being here with my plants and everything else. So that's me today. Jay, thank you for being here with me. Jay is a new-ish community member of YAC, and I'm so happy that we're going to get to know you a little bit better today, hear a little bit about your story. So how about we start with you introducing yourself a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited. And I guess just to start it off, a little bit of a description. My name's Jay, 36-year-old Caucasian male, fairly light skinned because I have to stay out of the sun right now because of treatment. So no tan yet this year. But short brown hair, a little bit of scruff, and I'm wearing a salmon colored t-shirt today. And I'm super excited to be sitting outside on my patio surrounded by trees in Ottawa today, or just outside Ottawa. I guess we have a perfect summer morning so far, blue sky, sun shining, and it's going to be a beauty day today.
Awesome. We're both in the summer. Over here, same. Blue sky. Amazing. It's too noisy. I'm by a bus route. So when the bus passes by my house, it's so noisy I can't sit outside, but I will today later. So today, like I was saying, we are with a young adult cancer survivor from our community. And so we're going to get to talk to Jay and learn about his story a little bit. So that's some of what we're going to talk. So I want us to dive right in. How about you start by talking a little bit about maybe the Jay before cancer, and then some of what your connection to cancer is right now and where you're at. Let's go with that.
Yeah, sure. So where to begin? I guess before cancer, um, I have always been very active, very healthy person. I've always been involved in sports. Particularly, I grew up playing competitive hockey and baseball. So always very active from a very young age. And as I got kind of a little bit later into my 20s and stuff, when that whole dream of playing professional sports kind of fades away, transition that into just some more recreational and stuff with some friends, and I really found a liking in running. So I spent quite a number of years running, actually doing marathons and triathlons and everything. And through that, my knees took a pretty big beating. So unfortunately, I'm not really doing too much of that competitively anymore. But running and cycling and outdoors has always been a very huge part of who I've been and my self-care. So professionally, I spent about 8 or 9 years working for our public school system here in Ottawa, basically as a youth crisis counselor. So working with high school students specifically, basically that are struggling with all different types of, barriers and challenges that prevented them from whether going to school or being able to graduate or, that's right, everything from mental health to addiction to everything in between.
Mhm.
So I've always been a helper. I absolutely love that job. I connect very naturally with people, and especially I find that younger demographic. Um, in that field, being a male, I had a very interesting experience connecting with people in a very different way because we're kind of a dime a dozen, I guess you could say, in that field, especially in crisis work. So I really, really enjoyed that. I did spend a little bit of time as well in the military, in the reserves. So that was something very, very close to my heart. I was very close with my grandfather who passed a few years ago, and he was a World War II veteran. And we really connected quite closely over that. So that was something I always wanted to do just because of him. And
Mhm.
we had kind of bond. So I spent about 3 or 4 years in the reserves, in the infantry.
Yeah.
And recently, I guess, in the last, I'd say maybe forward to the last 5-ish kind of years, or I guess a little longer than that. But 8 years ago, I got hired as a firefighter. So I'm a captain with North Dundas Fire Services. Super, super proud of that. One of the youngest captains to get that rank in that service. So
Wow.
really, really pumped about that. And outside of that as well, I'm on the senior management team of St. John Ambulance in Ottawa, overseeing all of their instructors that go out into the community and teach first aid and mental health first aid and medical first responder programs. So I'm very, very big part of developing and training and writing curriculum and coaching those folks up. Um, and the other hat I wear with them is I also oversee all of their volunteer programs. So they have a huge volunteer corps of medical first responders that go out and provide medical coverage in the community. I know you guys have them out where you are as well. So I'm not sure if you're super familiar, but basically the same type of role out here. And one of my favorite things is we also have a therapy dog program. So being a dog lover and having mental health in the past and really knowing firsthand how impactful animals particularly could be, that's one that I'm very, very happy to be part of running. So basically, that is me right up until my diagnosis in November of 2020, so late November. And I'm happy to say I'm still doing all of that. So I'm not. I really have been able to kind of keep pushing through. Obviously, I'm on modified duties with the fire department, obviously, just because of physical limitations with treatments and everything right now. Um, but I'm really happy to say I haven't had to really take a back seat with any of that. Just slow down a little bit,
Yeah.
uh, kind of prioritize stuff. And I guess a fun little fact that not many people know that usually come out in conversation. I'm a yoga instructor as well. So I found yoga throughout my journey that we'll talk about a little bit later, obviously in the conversation. But it was it was a huge impact. And I met some very key people along the way that really helped me in that journey. And um, I have no problem saying that finding yoga and certain people that are mentors to me now have um, absolutely saved my life in a various array of ways.
Mhm.
Uh, so I'm all about giving back. I'm a big believer on life experiences are not only meant for us, but they're meant to be shared with other people to make their kind of journeys easier or more comfortable or what have you. Um, so once I was kind of to a healthier point, I decided very quickly that that was something I wanted to do. So yeah, that's something else I'm involved with. And I spend a lot of my time working specifically actually with first responders and military, struggling with PTSD and mental health. But I do a little bit of community work, but that's kind of my passion, reaching those folks because it's a very underrepresented demographic in kind of the wellness world. So I kind of have firsthand experience knowing what it's like breaking into that kind of world, and it was not easy. So my goal is making it as easy as and as accessible as possible to folks.
This is amazing. Like when you said you're a giver, yes, you are. Just looking at your career trajectory and the work that you've done and the job that you've done, which are many of them, if not all of them, are quite challenging. They're demanding professional roles. But yeah, it's amazing, and I can see. So before we started the recording, we talked for a few brief minutes, but I can see how all of those professional experiences and the way you've kind of immersed yourself in it and learned from it had an impact on where you are now, which we'll address. But learning, all the skills Jay and I were saying before the recording, that life experiences uh, teaches us, sometimes forces us to learn, and sometimes we ask and take it in, but we learn from our experiences a lot, and sometimes have no idea how what we've learned can and will help us in challenges in the future. And so I think to pay attention to that, your career path is wicked. And I'm glad to hear that you have been able, even if you've slowed some of this down, to continue to do this, because I can totally hear your passion in how much you love what you do, which I relate to. I do actually really love what I do, but I think it's important as well to find a way to keep that up. So you were saying there's a few things I want to come back to, but we will have time to. But now let's go into, you were diagnosed in November 2020, so during the pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit about your diagnosis and how this has been since then for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have just a little tiny bit of a background that will make things a little bit clear. I've always had um, not not health anxiety, but going to the doctor and like that type of stuff has always made me a little bit kind of anxious. Uh,
Mhm.
so to be going through this whole process during the pandemic um, has definitely been a challenge, but I've grown a lot. So like I'll talk a little bit about that because it's definitely forced me to address some things very early on and become comfortable with certain things right from the get-go because I didn't really have a choice, right? So we'll kind of get to that in a little bit, I guess. But yeah, so I was diagnosed in late November 2020, so a handful of months ago. Um, it kind of came absolutely out of nowhere. It wasn't one of those things where things were happening for a really, really long time and doctors were concerned and it was months and months of tests. Um, I started having very, very minor discomfort in the stomach area. Um, Fatigue, but a lot of it was very intertwined with my mental health, right? And the anxiety and working through a pandemic and everything I had going on before. So um, I chalked a lot of it up to mental health, right? Because we know there's such a huge mind gut connection um, that I really didn't think beyond that, right? So I talked to my doctor a couple times, who's phenomenal, by the way, great, great doctor. Um, she's phenomenal, supported me tremendously, and we really didn't see a need for concern, to be honest with you. And then the symptoms kind of progressed a little bit, and I kind of just had a feeling something was up. Like I'm pretty um, in tune with myself, and I kind of just knew that something maybe was going on. So I went back to my doctor. Um, they were sold on the fact that it was something to do with just inflammation in the gut from anxiety and stress of everything, but offered to do a colonoscopy if I wanted to. It wasn't something that was standard because of my age, obviously. It wasn't something that was even on her radar. But doing some research, and I kind of made a very big mistake early on of playing the Dr. Google game. Um, and of course, that popped up colon cancer right away, right? With some of the stuff I was experiencing. So that was kind of implanted in my mind from very early on. Um, and my doctor knows me quite well. She's known me through my PTSD journey. And so she knows kind of a lot of my triggers and kind of what makes me tick. So she actually offered right away. She's like, you know what? If you want a colonoscopy, I will gladly write the referral. Like, if that'll make you feel better, if you're not going to sit here and stress about this for months on end, like, I'll gladly write it. So I'm like, you know what? Absolutely. Let's do it. Right. Worst case, you do it, nothing happens. I know. And then on the other end of the spectrum is if it is something, at least we find it. Right.
Yeah.
As scary as that was to think about, I mean, it's better off finding something than not, obviously. Right. Um, so that was in late November. And she had put a rush on the colonoscopy just for my sanity, which was very appreciated.
Yeah.
Um, but unfortunately, because of the pandemic and everything, that was still a couple months away. So really, a couple months is nothing to wait for a non-urgent appointment, but it felt like forever.
Yeah.
But he did tell me if things get worse, if you find it's really playing with your anxiety and it's just too much, just go to the ER, right? Go to the ER, tell them you're having symptoms, and that will kind of get everything rolling a little bit quicker. Um, so fast forward a couple weeks, My wife and I went down to, I shouldn't say this on here because it wasn't allowed at the time, but it's okay. Um, I went down to Montreal to visit my grandparents' gravesite, which we normally do before every winter. They're in a military cemetery, and we normally go down for Remembrance Day and over the summer. And I always make a point to go down before it snows because then we can't find them when it snows.
Yeah.
So we went down on a Sunday, and for whatever reason, on the drive home, I just kept thinking like, you know what, like just go to the hospital, just go to the hospital. And we got home that night and we were talking about it on the drive home. And my wife was like, you know what, like you're gonna perseverate on this for days, just go. Like if you just go.
Do it.
So he kind of pushed me to go. So I went that night to the ER, and they were great. They really just thought it was diverticulitis or, again, inflammation of the bowel and AB, like all 100 other things it could be.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah. So luckily the ER physician that was on that night wanted to do a CT scan just to confirm diverticulitis or not, so they could prescribe the right meds. So I was kind of like, oh, CT scan, like that. Before this, I've never had a CT scan. Like I've had a whole whack lot of X-rays for breaks and sprains, but I've never actually had one of those bigger type of tests, right? So I got pretty nervous, but they reassured me it was just, standard practice. You're going to be all good, and it is what it is. So I went back the very next morning. Um, it was actually a different radiologist with a student, and that did my scan. And I found out later, actually, no, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So anyways, I did my scan. Um, I waited in the emergency room because they said they'd have the answers in about 45 minutes. So I waited and played on my phone, didn't think anything of it. Like I was not nervous at all. Like in my mind, I'm like, oh, diverticulitis, inflammation, get some meds, whatever. Couple weeks, it'll shake it off, right? And then of course, the CR doctor opens the door, calls my name. He's like, oh, come on back. Right. And I could tell he had a chart and he was talking like really quiet. And I could tell just by his demeanor, like, I didn't know if it was personality or like, because at that point I had nothing bad in my mind at all. Like I kind of did the whole Google thing, but I really, truly didn't think it was going to be that.
Yeah.
Uh, so he brings me back to a little bay, sits me down, pulls this piece of paper out. And he's like, so we got your results back. And there's a small little growth in your colon that the radiologist marked as needs more investigation for possible malignancy. So first of all, I was like, what the hell is malignancy? I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
And so he's like, cancer. And I was essentially like, I don't know if we could swear on this or not, but
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
but um, I was like, essentially, I looked at him and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what do you mean cancer?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, and as we all know, I appreciate this now looking back, that ER doctors are not the most compassionate people because they need to work quick and they just need to get the job done most of the time, right? So bedside manner was not um, up to standard for the conversation we just had. And like I said, I do not blame him at all. I totally get it. Like I work in emergency services. I get those quick, dirty conversations that need to be had. So now I get it. But at the time, I I went, I was sitting there. I remember going tunnel vision. I remember my heart pumping through my chest and everything just kind of like closing in around me, so to speak.
Mhm.
Um, so the first thing I said to him was, do I need to call somebody? Like, do I need to call my wife? Do I need to call my family? Like, what do I do here? And he's like, no, don't do anything yet. We're going to come up with a plan. We're going to figure out what's going on for you. You sit tight. I'm going to be back shortly. So he went off to do his thing. This awesome nurse came by like very shortly after, threw the warm heated blankets on me, and we're like, if you need anything, like, we're here. We know this is crazy. It's COVID. You're by yourself. Is there anybody you can call? And I'm like, absolutely. Like, I'm gonna get on the horn with my wife and let her know what's going on. Um, and unfortunately, there was no, like, we weren't allowed to have visitors in right away, right? So, oh yeah, in my mind, like it was just, I guess that was probably um the first panic attack that I've had in like years, a good 2 years prior to basically hearing that news. So it hit quite hard. Um, and basically the rest of that day was a big giant whirlwind. So again, all these things kind of fell into place for me. Um, Coincidentally, I'm a big believer in things kind of play out the way they're supposed to play out, and people fall in your life and make connections with people that are just meant to kind of be there at that time. So my family doctor actually works in the ER a couple days a week. So she got a flag on her system that I was in the ER. So she called me. I got a call from her on my phone, basically within 10 minutes of getting those results from the physician or from the ER doctor.
Oh,
So
wow.
she called me. She's like, "Hey, you're in the ER. What's going on? I saw your chart." So I kind of filled her in a little bit, and she made a call right away to one of her contacts that was the on-call general surgeon at that hospital for the day. So within like 15 minutes, I'm talking to all these different doctors and my chart's getting flown around to people, which was super scary. But now looking back on it, I'm very fortunate the way it did happen because things happened really fast. Like I didn't have to wait. So I guess the surgeon came in, we did a quick consult again. This general surgeon had a military background, so not a good bedside manner. But again, we connected on that. Like it was all good. Like he was very blunt, very factual. While we were waiting for him to get to the hospital, I was super fortunate that this awesome nurse that I had that day said, "You know what? Screw it," and actually snuck my wife into the ER. Oh, she's like, "You know what? There's more going on than COVID right now. Like, forget this." So she brought my wife right back. My wife was with me when the surgeon came in and talked to us about what he thought, what his recommendations were. And his recommendations basically were he was gonna quote unquote make a time slot in the ER that day for me because there was no more room. But they owed him a couple favors. So he was adamant to do it that day. And his plan was for anybody that's going to be listening that has ever had a colonoscopy before, his plan was to flush my system out as soon as possible. The hospital way. So if you've never done that, it's IV bag fluids, about 4 or 5 liters of a system flush.
Pleasant, I'm sure.
No, oh, it was great.
Best
Yeah,
experience ever.
yeah. So luckily they gave me a nice little private room with a bathroom right there, and I went through that whole process. And basically the plan was if I were able to get that done, he would go in and do a partial scope that day to get a picture and biopsy and tattoo everything that was going on to send the referral directly to Ottawa to make everything happen kind of as quick as possible. If it didn't work, I was going to come back later that week to do it anyway, but he was very go, 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 which I'm fortunate about now.
Yeah.
So everything went as planned. He got me upstairs within 2 hours. I was out having a scope done, and I'm not going to name names or hospitals or anything because to throw in just a little funny story about it is right before I got my scope done, they read you your name, they confirm who you are, read the procedure, get your final consent. Because everything happened so quick, I never signed a consent form to have the procedure done. So they were going through the files and I was on the OR table. The anesthesiologist is starting to pump meds into me. And the surgeon is like, "Oh shit, he didn't sign its form." So the surgeon literally put the form in front of me and was like, "Are you good?" And I'm like, "I'm good, let's do it." He like took my hand with his hand and kind of scribbled my name on the form.
Let's do this.
So it was a funny little kind of hiccup and, a pretty scary day. But now I look back and I love telling that story because it's hilarious.
Yes, you were like probably feeling very safe in the sense that they were there for you. Then the trust is easier to say, yeah, give her, do it, do what you got to do.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, um, very quick. I don't remember any of it. Next thing I remember is waking up, and again, my wonderful surgeon, with his excellent bedside manner, decided to come up and tell me what he had found and what he sees, before I was even fully awake.
Mhm.
I was still pretty groggy. My wife was in a waiting room like 20 feet away, but unfortunately, they didn't get her to come over and hear what he was saying because of COVID. Anyways, um, basically, he full out said, he's like, what I thought, it looks like cancer. Um, Good news is it's very small. Um, and I got all the biopsies I needed. I'm going to, we'll wait for the results. They're going to be about 3 to 5 days. Again, they put a rush on that. Normal biopsies, could be anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks.
Mhm.
Uh, and fortunately, I don't know how these doctors worked, how they did, but I got things back. So that was a Monday. And then that Friday, it was November 19th, I believe, if I remember correctly, November 19th, November 20th. Um, I was at work, and I went to work for the rest of the week. And of course, I was not sleeping that week. Anxiety was through the roof.
Of course.
Um, Basically on like survival mode that week. Like I just wanted that phone call. And by the time Friday came around, I didn't even care what the answer was. Like I was like, I just want to know.
Yeah.
I'm done waiting. Like I just want to know what this is, and let's get on with this show.
Yeah.
So that afternoon, my surgeon called me. He confirmed that it was, in fact, it came back as it did come back as malignant. So again, the kind of shock kicked into high gear.
Mhm.
Uh, I remember meeting my wife at one of those park and ride off ramps on the highway there. And when she got there, I was like walking up and down the on ramp. Like I was in a complete, like, just I had to move and walk.
Yeah.
Uh, I was in a complete daze. Like I was literally walking up and down the side of the road,
Mhm.
uh, just trying to process, burn energy, like just move.
Yeah.
She picked me up, and then everything from there was like very quick. Like, of course, you go through the having to tell people, that I don't want to get into too much, 'cause I don't know what your next questions are.
Mhm.
Essentially, from that point, my surgeon fired everything off to the Ottawa Cancer Center, at the Ottawa Hospital. And within about 2 weeks, I got a call from them. So again, very quick. Um, I met my surgeon. I did a whole bunch of other MRIs, CT scans, blood tests, all that workup stuff. Uh,
Mhm.
and I had my surgery scheduled for February 19th, which again, given COVID and everything, was very quick. And then, so I had my surgery in February 19th.
Yeah.
I had a lower anterior resection, I think that's what they call it. They took out about 8 or 9 inches, um, and basically were able to reconnect everything back together, fortunately. So I had no
Excellent.
bags or ostomies or any of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And I was able to get it done laparoscopically too, so which was awesome. Uh,
Yes.
I was blessed to have the head surgeon of the whole department to do my surgery. So she was absolutely phenomenal. And the surgery went really well. Recovery was tough for a while because, again, I'm an active person, so not being able to get up and go um, sucked. Uh,
Mhm.
and once I had the follow up with my surgeon, they did confirm that some lymph nodes were involved. So because of that, they wanted to do cleanup chemo, as my oncologist called it.
Yeah.
So we decided to go ahead with that. And I also volunteered for a trial for young adults with colon cancer.
Yeah.
Uh, they're doing a trial with a couple different kinds of chemo, but they're both standard of care. They were just looking at different efficiency rates.
Okay.
So I jumped right into that. I'm like, hey, if I can help somebody out or people with this, let's do it. So I'm going into my 5th cycle of my chemo next week.
Okay.
Yeah, next week. So just about halfway there.
Yeah.
So super excited. Um, Not to be on chemo, but to be almost halfway there.
Yes, I hear you.
And again, like my medical team is awesome. My oncologist is phenomenal. Any questions, little like we have a joke every two, because I'm on a trial, I get to see him every 2 weeks. So he has to see me before each infusion, which is awesome because most people only see their oncologist like maybe twice over the course of a 6-month treatment plan. So we have a very good connection. He's like all on board with like all my crazy, I'm doing a lot of like alternative stuff. So I'm big like with my naturopath and like acupuncture, and I'm doing like high dose vitamin C. So he's like super on board and supportive of all that stuff.
Yeah.
So he's great. I don't know if you saw in Yak, but I posted, I was one of the first patients at the Ottawa Cancer Center to actually try icing with my particular chemo regimen. It was very big in the States, and they're using it in a lot. They're using it in a lot of major cancer centers there, but it hasn't made its way here yet. And so I tried that last cycle. I got a whole bunch of research and showed my oncologist a bunch of studies, and he's a study guy. So he's like, hey, if you could present me studies, I'm all for it. So I tried that so for my cycle 4, and it was actually very successful. So we're going to be trying it again over the next few rounds to see if it continues. Beyond that, that's kind of where I am right now.
This is amazing. Like there's so much of what you touched on new, newly connected to Yak. I feel like anyone listening today, either someone who was recently diagnosed with cancer, who knows someone who was recently diagnosed with cancer, or who's just kind of listening in and wanting to learn what it could be when you're a young adult. I feel like your story touches on so many things we've heard from our community, from how big of a blur it becomes when you hear the word cancer, and how important it is to have someone with you, because the capacity to retain information is super, super hard. So the challenges of the pandemic, they're real. We could do an entire episode only on that, but there's so much of what you touched on. And again, like you've said it many times, you have had what sounds like an amazing team of healthcare providers, doctors, surgeon. It's not always the case, sadly. It does happen because we hear a lot of things negative about the healthcare system. It's definitely not all bad. And I think your story kind of shows that, which is really great. Thank you so much. So the last part we're going to touch on together today is around the connection to community. So like I was saying at the beginning of our recording together and our episode, you recently joined, you've been recently diagnosed with cancer, as we heard, and you recently joined the Yak community, and you have jumped in with all of who you are and your heart. And like I was saying, you have such a positive, and I'm not saying positive because you have such a beautiful energy on our private Facebook group, but also I know you've taken part in chats. So can you tell me a little bit about how does connecting with your peers, with young adults dealing with cancer, has helped you, and how is it helping you right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess to start off, and one thing I learned early on through that journey was the power of connection, and not to isolate yourself, and how important it is to reach out, and even if it's 1 or 2 people, like just to have that connection. So when this all came about, of course, like the shock and everything kind of starts to slow down. You really start to, okay, I need to come up with a plan here. What am I going to do? Fortunately for me, I came into this journey with like not even a toolbox, like a trunk full of like resources and supports, and people that helped me through my mental health journey. So I almost had this little team set up already, but I knew that between that, and I do have to definitely give a little kind of shout out to my wife, Leslie, and my family, who have been absolutely amazing through all of this. I also knew that I needed to connect with people that were living this firsthand, right? Because it's one of those things where, as a first responder, unfortunately, we hear this lots that if you don't understand, I'm not talking to you, right? Because you just don't get it. And it's not that you don't trust them. It's not that you don't want to tell them. Sometimes with certain things like PTSD and, bad calls at work, for example, or cancer, it's different when you could talk to somebody that you don't have to explain yourself to, where you could just say something, you could vent, you could complain, the good, bad, or the ugly. And people just, yeah, I get it. Or I've been there, or yeah, that happened to me too, or yeah, that sucks. That's a really shitty thing. Sorry that's happening. So I connected with the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation here in Ottawa very, very early on, in the very early days of finding things out, and had a couple sessions with the cancer coach service they offer through their foundation. So one of their cancer coaches is very involved with YAC. She's very involved with the young community. She's phenomenal. And she right away, she's like, hey, like you got to reach out to this YAC community. They're young adults. They have chat groups. They have support groups. They do all kinds of stuff. And I jumped right in. Like I checked out the page. I was kind of like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like I didn't know that existed. I put the application in to be like to join onto the Facebook group. And from day one, it was kind of just this light bulb of like, oh my gosh, like there's all these people out there that are going through this stuff that I can relate to. And it was just this comfort and this like, oh my gosh, there's people out there like me, like that are experiencing this same thing. Because in all honesty, like I've been fairly healthy. Like we haven't really had a lot of medical stuff in my family. Um, I honestly didn't know how, it's I feel silly admitting this, but it's my truth, I guess, that I didn't really understand how many young people were affected / diagnosed with cancer until I was forced into that world. Like I had no clue. Like you see all the like bubbly lollipop and rainbow commercials on TV and Facebook and whatever. But you never really see the other side of it until you're forced into that world. So right from day one, I love the idea of YAC. I love the connection with people. I love that platform to vent and get suggestions and just input and ideas, and on those bad days, because I know I'm super positive, and I decided very early on that this wasn't going to own me. It wasn't going to define me. It's a little kind of blip in my journey. But I still have shitty days, right? Like my mental health still gets the best of me. There's still days where I sit at home angry at the world, and don't want to see anyone, don't want to talk to anybody, but you bounce back from that, right? And YAC and the chats have been a big part. So I dove right into the chats as well. And I will say I did have, not with YAC, but early on, I did have a very negative experience with a support group that was mainly older adults because I didn't know where to go. So I was on like Ottawa support groups, and I jumped into this one trying to kind of put myself out there. And it was not the right thing for me. It was not the right people, demographic, mindset, approach. Like it was just not good. So that's when I really tried to give the YAC chats a try. And they were awesome. They're great. I do them weekly. I do sometimes 2 or 3 a week, depending on where I'm at or what my schedule allows. And through YAC, I also joined. We have like a little book club going on that started before the before the
Primetown, before Primetown.
yes, Primetown. Yes, before Primetown, to read Salika's book. And that's been amazing, to be honest. Like we still meet weekly. Like we have a group chat. We talk all the time. Those folks are like honestly some of my like closest friends right now. So it's been really, really, it's been an awesome group of people. And through YAC, like I've always been an advocate for people that are marginalized or like have a hard time or underrepresented population. So one thing I did recognize very early on, that males are like hugely misrepresented in this, like in this community. And I know they're out there, but and I connected with that because when I was going through my mental health battle, males are very misrepresented in like support groups and like that type of stuff in those communities as well. As well in the yoga community, males are hugely misrepresented in that community. So I've always kind of been this like, no, like I want to be the person that comes in and like in an untraditional way shows people that like me as a male first responder, rough around the edges, like not really was ever into all the lollipop and rainbow wellness stuff, did find a way to access it. And I do think it's very accessible if it's presented in a proper way by the proper people, on the proper platform, to make it, you know, like unintimidating, accessible, not the stereotypical, like, I know I keep going back to like lollipops and rainbows and wellness is this perfect sunshine and lollipop land.
Metaphor. I know
Yeah,
what
it's not like that, right? It's dirty, it's ugly, it's hard, it's scary, and it's going through the trenches and you're crawling through the mud most days, right, to get to where you need to go. And I get that. I've lived it on many different avenues, and really, I'm really looking forward to getting more involved with Yak, to try to kind of like bring that aspect in. And another, I know we're here for Yak, but another great group for me was Man Up to Cancer.
Yeah.
I know they're a male support group.
Yeah.
They're US based, but they have people from I think 7 different countries or something like that now. And they've been a really great tool as well. So my goal is to I'd love to bring some of that into Yak at some points, because it's such a missed category in the cancer world, I find. So I'm just, yeah, again, that's my connection with Yak so far. And I'm just super pumped to somehow, keep helping and getting involved, and bringing kind of a lot of those outside experiences in to try to target, that maybe male or newly diagnosed, or kind of more of that community that don't want stuff done the mainstream way per se, because that's kind of been my journey in a lot of different angles. So that's where I'm really looking forward to helping out and contributing in the future.
This is awesome. Thank you. We're pumped to have you connected. I'm with you, like male, people identifying as male. We've talked about that, and we get it with some researchers. Because people identifying as male in the research field is also something that is underrepresented. So I think there are different initiatives. And so I love that you have that passion. I'm super grateful for our chat today. I think that you said many really on point things during our conversation, but one of the things that definitely resonated with me, and I think with anyone who's listening, is the difference it can make to connect with others who get it. And so we always say that a lot of people will say, well, until I kind of got to connect with other young adults with cancer, I didn't really know I needed it. I had, some people like you have a good support system around them, and it's great. But there is a difference. So connection, like people shouldn't have to do this alone. And that's why Yak exists. We don't want young adults to deal with cancer alone. So huge thank you, Jay. We are going to have you back. We are going to talk about what we've mentioned, PTSD, and your connection to that. That's going to be the focus of our next chat. But huge thank you. And as I do, because our episodes air every Monday, I always end each episode with a reminder to just breathe. Breath, I know you're a big yoga fan, but taking a moment to just breathe can really, really make a difference in all moments of our days. When things are fabulous, it kind of allows us to connect with the gratitude of being in a great moment, great minute, great hour. But when things are really hard, giving our body the oxygen it needs can really, really make a difference. So it's our reminder to just breathe in the good and the bad. And thank you everyone for listening in or watching, and looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thanks again, Jay. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much. I look forward to our next chat. And yeah, just if I could leave anybody listening with anything, is you're not alone. Don't isolate. Reach out. I'm a big believer that everybody's tools and experience is different. It's not cookie cutter. So find what works for you and just be around people.
Yay. So you hear that? Have a great week, everyone. See you next time.